afternoon, pilot teachers, and good afternoon, students. Okay, thank you. Sit down. I did mention in our last lesson that today we are going to move on to the next subtopic in our booklet on climate. If you can double check on your booklet on climate, it is part 3 now that we're looking at. And part 3, the subtopic is on climate. So our lesson today will basically look at differentiating between the word climate and weather. And we are also going to look at some of the elements of weather from what we can observe, what we feel, and perhaps what we have heard about or know about already about the word weather. Before we start on with the next topic, I'd like us to look at what you were supposed to have completed for your homework. The task given was for you to construct a diagram. Is that correct? Okay. Check your exercise books. You were given 3 lots of diagrams, but you were asked to choose only one for the construction so that that diagram will represent what happens to the amount of solar radiation that comes through our atmosphere. We double check. The first diagram you could have constructed, you would also find in your booklet on climate, and that is on figure 8. If you had constructed the diagram, this is what it should look like on the monitor. Check your exercise book if you have done that. Well done. The second alternative that you could have used for the construction was looking at the activity you were assigned for the completion during your homework, and then using that particular diagram, you'll still be able to show the same information on solar budget or solar radiation budget. Okay, and finally, the other diagram that I also showed you, perhaps in our last lesson, there were 2 lots. You cannot just construct one. You have to have the 2 of them together so that the diagram is actually complete. Because this diagram here shows radiation coming through. Along the way, what happens to a certain percentage of it. We can see clouds there. Some gets to be reflected. Others get to be absorbed by the atmosphere. Others come right through to the surface and get to be reflected back from the surface. Others get to be absorbed by the earth itself. I also mentioned that when you're constructing the diagram to show the maybe solar radiation, there is always a balance. Whatever comes in also need to be balanced with what goes out so that the temperatures are not too high or the temperatures are too low. And the second diagram that must go together with the previous one should be showing us the return of the radiation, the long wave radiation that is back into space. So we have, again, if you had to make note, this is the diagram showing us the short wave radiation incoming, and the second diagram here showing the outgoing long wave radiation. Okay, those 2 diagrams must go together. You had an option and you decided which one you wanted to actually make note of. You double check. Have you all got your diagrams constructed in your exercise book? Yes? Okay, well done. Okay, having looked at that now, we can now move on to the topic that I'd like us to look at. And the topic is going to be a long one. It is based on part 3 on the climate. And we are going to actually look at climate in 2 parts. The first part is going to be discussing weather and the different elements of weather. And the second part is going to be looking at climate and then looking at factors which contributes to why there is a variation in climate from one region to the next. We start off first with looking at the definition between climate and weather, and then I will give you an activity of which that activity is going to be based on your observation, your feelings, and what you already know about how you can describe the conditions of the atmosphere. I'll explain that activity when we come to it. Okay, let's look at the information now from the monitor, and perhaps you might want to make note of that information also. 2 very important words that come up when we're looking with, or when we're dealing with, the topic on climate. The first one, weather. When we talk about the weather, it basically refers to the conditions or the state of the atmosphere at a specific time over a short period of time. It can be from hour to hour. It can be from day to day. But the important thing that we need to remember when we are discussing about weather in comparison to climate is that weather has to do with the daily conditions of the atmosphere at a specific time, and it is for a short period of time. The reason for why weather has to do with specific conditions over a short period of time is because the elements, they are unpredictable. They tend to change within maybe, say, hours, or even within minutes, or even from one day to the next. Now we compare the word weather to the term climate. What is climate then? When we're looking at climate, climate basically refers to the average conditions of the atmosphere over a longer period of time. In weather, we are looking at the daily conditions of the atmosphere. In climate, we are basically looking at the average conditions of the atmosphere over a longer period of time. Most of the recordings that we have, which describes generally the climate of an area, has to do with the yearly or the annual collection of data. And the data that is actually used to describing the climate of a region is mainly data for rainfall or precipitation, data for temperature, and also data for pressure. Those three are very important factors which also contributes to why climate varies from one place to the other. So the main difference then, this one talks about, or climate talks about, the average conditions over a longer period of time, and weather refers to the daily conditions of the atmosphere. You're able to distinguish the difference then from the explanation? Everybody? Frank, could you repeat or explain what you understand then, the difference between weather and climate?
Weather refers to the conditions of the atmosphere over a short period of time, and climate is conditions of the atmosphere over a longer period of time.
Okay, and I'd like you to also use the words daily. Weather talks about the daily conditions of the atmosphere. Climate talks about the average conditions of the atmosphere. So whatever figure you have for rainfall readings or temperature readings that is actually perhaps shown on a climatic table or a climograph will contain the average figures for the month. If we had a climatic figure or table, and that climatic table might show us the months of January to December. Rainfall for January might be 100 millimeters. That is not to say that 100 millimeters was recorded only in one day. We have to find out how many days there are in January. You add up the total amount of rain that fell in January, and then you divide by the number of days to get an average. So what you see on January, one figure shows the average. Similarly, for temperature, how many days are there in January? You add up the temperatures for each day, and then you divide by the number of days in January to give you an average. So when you look at the figures that are given, you have only one figure, which is an average figure given for that particular month, and similarly, right throughout to December. We'll concentrate then mainly on looking at weather today, and for you to be able to perhaps observe and also give information about the weather, you need to be specially trained. Meteorologists are the people who actually read about the weather, and they give us information on the daily conditions of the atmosphere. But as for us today, we are going to do a little activity, and the activity will require your observation, as well as that, how you feel today in terms of the general conditions of the atmosphere, and perhaps from what you might have heard or seen or known already about how you can describe the daily conditions of the atmosphere. So we are looking at today, this time or this point in time, and I'm going to give you a task. You're going to work in groups of 4s or 3s. I am going to actually distribute to each group a blank paper, A4 paper. Okay, on that blank A4 paper, your group, you're going to come up with a statement. And your statement should describe, from what you can see today, what you can feel today, and what you already know about how to perhaps explain or describe the conditions of the atmosphere. And you are going to write that statement on this piece of paper here. Then what we'll do is we'll go right around the class and we will try to find out how many or what you have actually written in terms of your statement describing the condition of the atmosphere. Remember, when we're talking about the weather, we are looking at the daily or day-to-day condition or state of the atmosphere. After we do this activity, then we'll move on to the next activity, and that is to look at the elements of weather that you might have discussed from your presentation. Okay, I'm going to give a group one paper. You'll have a marker, and then in your group you discuss, and then you write a statement on this piece of paper, and then we'll get each group then to present your maybe observation, your feeling, and also what you know already on how to describe conditions of the atmosphere. You work in groups of 3 or 4, and perhaps it will be convenient where you are sitting, or you could turn, yes, so you have 3 people. Perhaps 2 of you might come with this too. Okay. The 3 boys at the back. The 4 of you can work together. Okay, you'll have to come close there. Okay, when you're discussing, if you have more than one statement, let me know by a show of hand, and I will come around and give you some more papers. You discuss as a group, and it's only one statement that you're going to write down on what you can observe, how you feel, and what you already know. If you need help, let me know. I'll come around and see if I can maybe help you. Okay, you can get one marker, and you can pass one marker across to this other group. One for you, one for, and one for the other group. Yes. Sure. I'm not sure whether they are all working, so you'll have to pass one to somebody else. Okay, reminder again, remember it is a statement, so you can say I feel or it is, and you complete it. But you've got to be able to know, perhaps by observing from what you're feeling today and also what you already know. And you're going to write it big enough so that when we present it, you can show it also to the other students to see. Now we'll stand where you are, and then, or you will stand where you are for your presentation. I'll give you another 5 minutes, and then we'll go around the class to see what you have got written down. Somebody's. Okay, just leave it. Leave it in here. That's a second statement. So, on a new paper. Yes. You put one statement on a paper, and if you need, if you can maybe get a couple more, so we put them on separate papers because we're going to paste them up there for the others to see generally.
What exactly do you want us to say? Do you want us to say about the general weather or about what the wind is?
I mean, obviously, if you're going to talk about the general weather, you are going to be talking about the conditions of the atmosphere right now. So there are a couple of things that maybe you are able to observe, right? But which one is it that is more outstanding to you that you can maybe see or you can feel or you know about right now? It's not like what you know already from 2 or 3 years or 10 years or so, but it's today. Okay, you've got to write it big enough so that when we put it up there, everyone is able to have a look at it. Okay, you should be thinking of transferring now that information by using a marker so that it's clear and visible for the others to see. Have you decided?
Or what if
You're not.
no, we can like they saying we're gonna talk about how cold it is today.
Okay, so what if you had to put it in a statement, then what do you say?
But can we put it like, can we say the continuous changing of our weather? You know what we know.
Continuous. If you say continuously means you're including the other days as well.
Exactly. Let's look at today. Statement only. It is bang. Full stop. That's a statement, right? Okay.
Cloudy.
Okay. It is cloudy and it is cold. That's it, full stop. It's only a statement. How do you feel today by looking at the condition of the atmosphere? That's all. You have two things that you've written there. One, you are telling me that it is cloudy. The second thing is you are telling me it is cold. That's according to how you feel, right? How do you know it's cloudy? Can you feel it? What you are maybe looking out and observing. That's why I say you write a statement about how you feel or what you can observe or what you could have heard already from what people might have talked about in terms of describing the conditions of the atmosphere. Sure. You're gonna, and then after your explanation, you simply put this on the board so that we can work with it, work on what to have. You can tear that into two again. That's for you.
If it's cold and really
Sure. You can break that into 2 or 3. Pass it down between those students down there. You ready?
Can you just suggest the temperature approximate, give the approximate?
Yeah, you could. You could suggest, and later when we look through it, we'll emphasize also the fact that usually you will need an instrument to help you give an accurate figure. Yeah, that's fine. That's very good. That's exactly what I wanted. There's a couple of because it will be about the same when you think about it. The group has volunteered to go first. Yeah. It's all right, a bit too small, but yeah, it's all right. That's a statement to be proven. Remember, you're going to stick that up and you're going to put it up on the board. Okay, we're going to get the groups now. At least a representative from your group to come up, and you are going to actually tell the class what you have discussed in terms of the discussion topic on writing at least a statement describing the conditions of the atmosphere today. You bring your paper up to the front and you also paste it on the board and you leave it here so that the rest of the students can also make comparison or see. We'll start with the group here in front. Okay. Where's the microphone? Okay, your group, quickly. Just one person. And then you paste it onto the board. Yes, you have to come up. One will do. Okay, let's maybe hear from this group here the statement that you've written about the condition of the atmosphere today. Okay, quickly. From the front, go there. Stand on there.
It is windy and cold. Also, the temperature is approximately about around 25 degrees Celsius.
Okay, that's the statement from that group. Thank you. Val, your group. Quickly.
It feels cold and windy today. That's what our group came up with.
Okay, good. Thank you. Next group. Caleb, your group, quickly.
It is cool and windy, and the sky is cloudy and dull today.
Okay, thank you. That's the statement from that group. Next group. Noel.
It is cloudy and cold today.
Okay, according to this group, that's what they've discussed. Thank you. The next group, Gibest.
It is cold and today is a cloudy and cold, cloudy and windy day, and it's cold today.
Okay, thank you. That's the statement from that group. Ovio.
A drop in the temperature, which is below 27 degrees.
Okay, thank you. And finally, but not the least,
It is a dull, windy, cold and cloudy day today.
Okay, thank you. Well done. At least you are able to actually describe what you can see and what you can feel in terms of the condition of the atmosphere today. So when we talk about the conditions of the atmosphere on a daily basis, these are some of the descriptive words that we can use to describing the condition. If we look at each one of those now, we are going to pick out some of those words that are used, and then we are going to come up with what we call the elements of weather. Okay, let's check each one of those and see if we can come up with elements. When we talk about it is a windy and cold day, let's look at cold. The first group told us it is cold. At the same time, they also told us that the temperature is approximately about 25 degrees Celsius. The next group told us that it feels cold. The next group, it is cool. The next group, cold. Then we have cold. Here, this group talks about a slight drop in the temperature below 27 degrees Celsius. And then this particular group here talks about cold. So the words cold, cool, hot, what do you think they are a description of in terms of elements of weather? Temperature, good. So the first element of weather then is temperature. Temperature is basically describing how hot or cold a particular place is at a particular time. And that's exactly what you were able to pick up from your description. You described the temperature of today by using words like hot, cold, cool, etc. Later on, we're also going to look at, we cannot say that in Papua New Guinea, especially around Port Moresby, it is cold, because we will have to look at what do we mean between what range of temperature to what range of temperature would the term or the word cold come in. Between what range of temperature to what range would the word cool come in? Because generally around Port Moresby, the temperature is hot. So even today, we feel that the place is a little bit cooler than expected. If we had to put, or if we had to measure the temperature of today by using the correct instrument, then we will still be able to say that perhaps the temperature of Port Moresby is not going to be cold. It will be impossible unless all of a sudden we have snow and ice. Then we will say the temperature is cold. We will look at how to describe and the terms to use for description of temperature later on. Okay, then we also have another important element. The first group here looked at windy. The second group, windy. The third group, windy. The fourth, no. The fifth group, windy. The sixth, nothing. And the seventh, windy. Another element of weather will be wind. Okay, and there are two things when we're looking at elements of weather to do with wind. One, first of all, how fast the wind is actually moving or traveling. That is to do with wind speed. Thank you. Okay, how fast the wind is actually blowing, that's to do with wind speed. We are also interested, if you were a meteorologist, you would be also interested to knowing from where the wind is actually blowing from and going to. Wind direction, good. Okay, so we have two things here together with wind. Wind speed, knowing how fast the wind is actually blowing, and wind direction, from where is the wind blowing from and where is it going to. Okay, we check the next words that you have used. From here, cloud, yes. A lot of you say that the sky is actually cloudy and dull. Here we are looking at it is cloudy. Here we are looking at today is a cloudy day. Here we are looking at it is dull and it is also a cloudy day. So what do you think is the next element of weather? Cloud cover. Okay, cloud cover basically tells you how much of the sky is actually covered by clouds. There are a couple of ways you are able to actually tell. Usually, meteorologists would use their eyes to observe, because the eyes is the main instrument that they use to describe how much cloud cover there is for a day. Today, perhaps if we look outside today, we can see that 8 out of 8 of the sky is covered by cloud. Tomorrow, it might be 0 out of 8. It might be a non-cloudy day. So every day, the condition changes. Is there any other words that we have used there that we can also complete or continue on with describing the elements of weather? Okay, if you feel hot, sweat, sticky, what is it that we are actually trying to describe? Humidity. Good. Beside temperature, it is also humidity. So humidity is the next element of weather. You were supposed to also be able to describe it. You can say, oh, today the air is a little bit dry. Can you feel that? Can you feel that the air is a little bit dry today? It's colder or it's cooler compared to perhaps yesterday where the place was hotter or stuffy. Okay? When we talk about humidity, we are basically looking at the amount of water vapor there is in the atmosphere or in the air. Okay, so we have temperature, wind speed, wind direction, cloud cover, humidity. Could there be other elements that we can also include? Yes? What would be another element? Perhaps we haven't give a description of, but we can also include as element of weather. Somebody said yes here. Mason, did you say yes? Tell us.
Precipitation.
Very good. Precipitation or rainfall. In Papua New Guinea, it will be mainly rainfall. So here, precipitation is also another important element of weather. If you were in the polar regions, then it would be snowfall or icefall. In Papua New Guinea, it will be water falling out of the sky in the form of rain. Okay, that's not all. How about we are trying to look at the amount of maybe cloud cover and also how much of the sun's energy is actually penetrating or coming through. Another important element. Sunshine, correct. Sunshine, we also are interested in finding out how much of the sun's or solar radiation is actually coming through on a daily basis. We need an instrument to be able to find out how much of it is actually coming through, and that's what we will do in our next lesson. One more important element. Somebody is making note of it.
Pressure.
Pressure, very good. And basically, when we look at pressure, we are looking at the weight of the air on a column or given area at a particular time. And pressure changes together with amount of heat a place gets, and also together with the rising of warm air and the sinking of cold air. That's to do with pressure. So let's check. We have basically made a list of at least 3 elements from our description, but if we were trained, we will be able to also describe all the other elements from our description. So if we look at those different elements of weather then, we have temperature, rainfall, cloud cover. Okay, there is something else that we can also include with cloud cover, and that is cloud type. You see, the meteorologists are interested in the cloud type because they can be able to predict whether it's going to rain in the next 24 hours or not. So cloud type is also important. Humidity, wind speed, wind direction, humidity, pressure, and sunshine. Okay, now that you know those different elements of the weather, if I ask you again to give a description of the conditions of the atmosphere today, will you be able to expand a little bit more on the statements that you have given? Yes? Okay, good. Your task then, the next activity is, you are going to actually look out of the classroom, and then into your exercise book, you are going to write a description of the conditions of the atmosphere with the help of the elements that we have just discussed. This time, it's individual work, and you are going to at least write a paragraph in your exercise book explaining today's condition. Perhaps when we come back in our next lesson, the conditions will be completely changed. But we'll work on what we have today, and then we can discuss what it was like today in our next lesson. You have perhaps 3 minutes to do your planning, and then you can think about writing that information perhaps for your homework. But I'd like you to make note of that activity number 2. Okay, have you made note of the activity? Okay, that's the activity you are going to actually work on. You plan, and then you also expand on it, and you come back with your reports tomorrow or in our next lesson. When you come back with your reports, at least your report would be a little bit more detailed compared to those very brief statements that we have made, because we have looked at the different elements that you should be thinking about when you are trying to describe the daily condition of the atmosphere. Okay, class, that will also bring us to the end of our lesson. If you can stand up now, please. Okay, to the pilot teacher, our teachers, our keyword for lesson 95 is weather. Good afternoon, and thank you, students.